As a follow-up to my recent video about the Rotorua Branch itself, I got the idea to revisit the railway park in Ngongotaha, as well as some of the disused railway track between here and Rotorua. Only around 45 minutes drive south of Tauranga, which is surprisingly closer than the Goldfields Railway, by about 15 minutes, we come to this old level crossing on State Highway 36. Continuing down the road towards Rotorua, you will see the little railway park itself. I'm amazed to see just how overgrown the railway has become since I was last here in 2016, although it's not really surprising that the line is still overgrown since there hasn't been any regular trains on here since 2001. And here's the railway park itself. Suffice to say, it's a pretty basic affair, with this miniature railway setup and a small shop selling second-hand model railway items. There's also a room with some layouts, which you can go and see if you pay a $5. As for the miniatures, a ticket for them is either $3 or $6, depending on which locomotive you want to ride behind. Inside the railway room, you'll see layouts themed around Germany, the United States, Switzerland, some random circus, and England. Incidentally, the English one mostly features Hornby models of Thomas the Tank Engine characters. It's certainly bizarre seeing both the Hornby and Bachmann Thomas models in the same shot. The engines that were running were Duck, Percy and Stepney, though for whatever reason the Hornby Stepney was hauling the Bachmann Annie and Clarabelle. I ended up bringing in two of my own model locomotives, and I was allowed to run both of them on the Thomas layout. These scenes feature my Hornby Class 66 with Duck making several background cameos. Insert corny fan service jokes here. The second engine I brought in was the HS4000 Kestrel. This model was made by Helgen, or is it Helgen, since it's a Danish company, in 2009, as a limited run of just 4,000 units. As for when I got mine, it was a Hatton's job back in 2019. Percy got a chance to run again after Kestrel was moved off his line. It'd be rude of me not to thank the railway volunteer who let me run my own locomotives on this layout. With that, we finish our look at the model trains. Now let's go back outside to see the real things. The first engine, or rather engine parts, that I came across was this lot. To me, it looks like the frame, wheels and bunker of a Climax locomotive. Either that or one of the E-class geared engines built by A&G Price and Thames. Sadly, none of the full-size locomotives here in Ngongotaha are in working order. I don't know too much about the history of this group, but from what I gather they haven't been doing well, especially since the Rona first reared its ugly and unwelcome head. On the plus side, the miniature engines are still working. This is their steam locomotive, named Sir Roy, or, as I like to call him, Sir Roy Orbison. He is a 460 or 10-wheeler, and runs on what I think is 16-inch gauge track. The other miniature engine is called Little Blue, and she runs on a 7 1/4 inch gauge track. Incidentally, that's the same gauge that the miniature railway in Tauranga uses. Before heading further south to Rotorua, I took the opportunity to have a look at the other full-size locomotives in the yard. But first, there was this collection of engine parts, which looked like they're the remains of a Hudswell Clark 060 saddle tank. Sorry, 040 saddle tank. If my research is correct, this passenger coach is A1225, or rather, what's left of A1225. I was told that some of the rolling stock here would be going to Gisborne. Presumably it would just be those ballast wagons, although I don't remember exactly. As for the coach, one of the railway volunteers said it will be taken somewhere else and turned into a bed and breakfast. In which case it'll probably be like what I saw down near the Waitomo Caves. At the head of the quartet of diesel locomotives was this black shunter. She was originally an 060 steam locomotive, and built by the Andrew Barclay and Sons of Scotland in 1947. She never ran an NZR service, only industrial, and was rebuilt as a diesel in 1972. If further research is correct, she arrived in Ngongotaha in 2008 after initially being preserved at the Goldfields Railway. Next up was another Andrew Barclay steamer that got converted into a diesel. This one was built in 1910 and rebuilt in 1955. Eventually, she arrived in Ngongotaha in 2005. The third engine is actually an ex-NZR design. This is TR344, built by A&G Price in 1957. She ran with NZR until 1991, and from that point on she was used at an industrial site in Morrinsville until coming to the railway park in 2009. I dare say these locomotives haven't moved for a very long time. It really is a shame to see a preservation group in such a poor state, but I was told by the volunteers here that there's barely any interest in them amongst the locals, and no one available to come along and help restore the locomotives. If you'd like to find out more about the Ngongotaha Railway Park, I'll leave a link to their website in the description. The park is still open on weekends, with the miniature railway and little model shops still going. As far as I know, they're still looking out for volunteers to help drive the miniatures, and I myself am considering joining in. Ordinarily I don't like to ask people to share my videos, but in this case I hope that you do, as I want as many people to see this video as possible. Besides showcasing an obscure railway organisation, I'm hoping to raise as much awareness of the group as I can. After leaving the railway park, I thought it would be a good idea to look at some of the abandoned/disused railway infrastructure south of Ngongotaha, starting with the Toei Street crossing, which, quite bizarrely, still has this post with old incandescent lights and a mechanical bell. I wonder when they were last used. If you'd like to know a little more about the history of the Rotorua Branch, feel free to check out the video I made about the line through the link in the top right corner. Just south of Toei Street was this short bridge across the Ngongotaha stream, and no, I did not walk onto the bridge lest I end up in the drink. Further down the line, and not too far from the Skyline Gondola and Rainbow Springs, is the old Kawaha Point road crossing. As you can see, a lot of the railway track in this area is so overgrown that you can barely tell the rails are still there. The last major piece of abandoned infrastructure we'll have a look at is this, the platform that was built in 1995 for the Silverfern railcars and their Geyserland Express. This is in a suburb called Kouutu, and at this point we're still a fair way from the centre of Rotorua. The line was cut back to Kouutu Yard in 1989, with the rest of the branch closing in the early 2000s. The old Lake Road overbridge was demolished in 2012 and replaced by what I think is a dual carriageway. I must say it's certainly strange having a look at this old platform again. Without referencing John Lennon, just imagine a Silverfern railcar pulling up with a load of happy passengers. After looking around the remains of that 90s-era station, we went further into the city for a bit of nostalgia, as weird as that may sound. Many years ago, my parents would often take me to that playground by the lake. Coming back in early 2022, I see the old playground is still there, but all these fancy boardwalks and new grass certainly weren't there 15 years ago. From what I gather, this lot is actually a very recent addition. In the distance, you could see the Lakeland Queen paddle steamer in what appears to be a dry dock. Mum told me that she rode on this boat during her honeymoon in 1989, 3 years after the vessel herself was built. And that was pretty much the last noteworthy moment on my trip to Ngongotaha and Rotorua. Even though I don't really like the latter too much, it was still fun revisiting these places I remember well from many years ago. Thank you for watching, take care everyone, and I will see you next time.